Welcome everyone to the Mercy Queen podcast. Today I have the distinct honor, and I really want to define it as distinct, to have a woman sitting with me of abundance overflowing. If you know about her, if you learn about her mission and what she's achieved in her life, the amount of insurmountable challenges that she had to overcome, and what she's doing with the power that she's created for herself through her life journey. I'm sitting here today with the one and only Laila Ehsan. She actually has written this book called I Want Freedom. And she also has a nonprofit model attached to the book itself. And I'm going to share more about her book today with you and what she's trying to do to empower young women and women in general, in order to not be in compromised situations based on, unfortunately, the hardship that she endured herself. So welcome so much, and thank you so much for being on my podcast, Laila John.
Oh my gosh, Shabana John, thank you so much. It's an honor to be in your podcast. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I like to usually share a little bit about how I met my guest. And then I'm also going to share, we usually always ask 3 questions. And as you guys know with my podcast, I always ask the guest to share what mercy means to them. And then I also cultivate a story based on what mercy means to me that I think about a lot on that day when I'm going to introduce my guest. So Laila John, John is like a way of endearment in the Afghan culture. But Laila I actually met in Miami at a business event, at a mastermind class. It was a Rudy Maurer Capital event, which I highly recommend his events for like building companies and networking. And I just laid eyes on Laila John for like a few seconds and was immediately captivated by her presence and her beauty. And then I got to know her, and I'm like amazed because her inward beauty actually shines through more than her outward beauty, which is already stunning. And so I fell in love with her, and she is now part of my business family. I am a huge supporter. I'm a huge fan. So that's where we first met. And the second thing I wanted to share about Laila. So Laila has a phenomenal story that there's a lot to say about her story. But in terms of just starting with before I introduce her story, I wanted to share what mercy means to me in relations to what I wanted to share with you specifically. So when I first got married, I was really young. I was really naive. Actually, similarly in your book, you actually were married at 16 and your husband was 28. And I actually met my husband, who's my current husband, at the age of 16, and he was 28, but we didn't marry until I was 23. But I was kind of in my mind, and the multiple reads of your Audible as well as your book, I was just taking mental notes of just comparisons. And one thing that really resonated with me and wanting to share with you about mercy for me today is when I first got married, I remember my husband, it was like the first year within our marriage, and my husband, wanted to send me to India to spend time with his family, my father-in-law, my in-laws. And keep in mind, I never went to India by myself. And I have a diagnosis of a history of mental health issues. I'm diagnosed bipolar, and I no longer take any medications because I've done a lot of healing on my own. But I've taken basically like every medication in the book. And so having said that, there was a night where I was trying to do homeopathic medications, and I told my husband that I did not want to fly on the plane. I said, I'm not feeling well. And I think he was kind of nervous. I think he was like, I think you're going to be fine. But I think there was also kind of like a financial thing where like, don't waste the ticket, right? And I kept on telling him that night, I don't want to board. I really feel uncomfortable. And he pretty much said, you know what, go on the flight anyways. And so I ended up going on the flight, and I ended up arriving to India. And at that time, I really didn't know my sister-in-laws. And I basically, unfortunately, in front of the entire family, his family, have a full-blown manic episode. And the funny thing about the experience is that he ended up having to take an emergency flight to kind of come rescue me. And I really distinctly remember that because I was not assertive in being able to say, I am not boarding the flight. My mental health is more important kind of than the ticket money. And I'm not trying to say that it was only the ticket money. I think he in his mind thought I would be okay, but I knew in my body that I wasn't going to be okay. I knew I was journeying into my own self jeopardization, right? And keep in mind, like 30 years after like intensive therapy and self-discovery, So now it's like my current son's, my new son, he's 5 years old. He was 5 years old. And it's like maybe 20 years later. And I also remember one time going to his kindergarten graduation. And I remember like telling my husband that I need to take a quick nap in the car and then I'll come back. And he was like, absolutely not. You're going to miss the graduation. And I sat in front of him in front of the entire Islamic school. And I said, you better give me the keys or else I'm going to scream so loud that I'm going to take the keys. I'm going to go nap in the car and I will be back. And lo and behold, I actually went into the car. I napped for 10 minutes. I came on time and I self-cared. And I realized that I come first. Exactly. And so, I mean, keep in mind, this is like 20 years of intense, kind of severe pain and trauma involved in the gnosis of myself in order to get to a stage where I realized that I do have priority in my journey and my voice and to listen to it and to honor it. Exactly. And so in relations to mercy, I wanted to share that with you because in the cultivation of mercy, everyone needs to realize that mercy always begins at home. Mercy always begins with the self. And mercy, then that looks different to everyone, what that means to you, right? So having said that, that is my introduction to the story of mercy with your podcast. And so I wanted to ask you now, in relations to your journey, when the word mercy comes into your mind, into your heart, what comes to mind for you?
Well, mercy to me means choosing compassion. Even if life have given us reasons to be bitter, I think mercy is one of the most beautiful things that human being can carry. Even if we still are in pain and helping others, I think it's one of the greatest gifts that we could have. And when I hear the word mercy, I don't hear weakness, I hear strength. Wow. I hear someone helping another person in need without any judgment, or choosing understanding without hate. And for me, to be quite honest with you, mercy helped me heal. If I had carried the anger towards people that have caused me pain, I think that would have destroyed me inside. So mercy is something that we all need to have within us. And I think the world, especially what's going on right now, needs more mercy than anything. I think mercy brings us together. It creates connection. And also, I think it's just overall creates love and affection among two people, being there for each other. So really, the world needs that more than anything right now, knowing with all the division and suffering and pain and judgment that's going on right now. We need it more than any other time. So that's what mercy means to me.
Laila, thank you so much for sharing your vision of mercy. There's a lot of times where I'm sad and I'm really dealing with my own grief. And sometimes I realize that in my own human suffering, when I actually may do something kind for someone else, feeding someone else that might be homeless, that it kind of in its own way will lighten my suffering. So thank you for sharing it's true, everyone does need mercy in the world. And I wanted to talk about your movement, I Want Freedom. Yes. And it's my journey to freedom. And so I'm going to share this book. When I listened to the Audible first, I gotten the hard copy in the mail later. And I've also not only listened to the Audible, I think twice, but I've actually listened to the Audible with the book as well, because there's so much here to capture in her book and in her journey as a woman. And in sharing this, I may get emotional, but it was so hard to even podcast with her because in terms of trying to keep it limited to 3 questions, there's just so much here in this book. So your journey started, and if you don't mind just elaborating on some of the key points that, because I know it's your journey, but her story starts as a very, young age with her family being torn apart with the Russian invasion. And keep in mind that she is a post-traumatic victim of war, right? A war zone. And she had to leave even her own mother with her sister and leave with her father, and her family was separated. And unfortunately, in her story, which is what her movement is about, I Want Freedom, she basically is forced into a very, very, unfortunately, degrading, emotionally, physically abusive marriage. And one thing that I really just admired in some of the highlights of your story, Laila, is that I noticed that one of the common threads and themes that you were constantly going through in your story is a young girl constantly trying to find the connection of love and the connection of understanding, the connection of empathy that every child deserves in this world, right? And keep in mind, she was very young, right? Like she had a situation sometimes when she had, as a stepmom, unfortunately, she became, like her and her sister became caretakers, right, of other children. So there's this constant, even when she became married, she unfortunately had to like caretake, right? And so there was this constant dichotomy between her own desire to be loved and understood and cared for, and also like this journey of someone who's not only constantly sometimes being traumatized, but not being received well in her journey. And it was just, I mean, like I said, there's so many layers to what she's produced. I also want to say that for someone who loves Audible books, I really loved the rendering of your reading. I thought it was really well read.
Thank you.
And so Laila, what I wanted to ask, in terms of your journey, like what is, if you want to elaborate what I Want Freedom means to you, and a little bit about what you've done with, unfortunately, the very, sad circumstances that you were in, and how you basically have now come into a movement of empowerment, not only with your book, but I also want to state that every profit that you make on this book goes to her nonprofit.
Yes.
And so if you want to elaborate within your own beautiful words, what I Want Freedom movement is about, and also like a little bit about whatever you would like to share in your journey, which is very well written in this book. So.
Thank you. Well, I Want Freedom is based on bringing awareness about child forced arranged marriages. It's a story that shares with the world of what really is happening behind the story of forced arranged marriage. Some folks have heard about forced arranged marriage globally, but they really don't know what's really happening behind the curtains. And my personal experience at age 16 was pretty scary. I wasn't quite ready to be married, be a wife, or soon to be a mother. As a young girl, a 16-year-old girl, I was very ambitious, I was very driven. I already knew exactly who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do with my life in the future. But all that was robbed from me suddenly. I come home one day and I was told that I'm getting married. Within 10 days, I was gifted away. And having said that, I also discovered while I was sharing my story, doing some research, that I was already aware of this was happening, to most of the girls around me, including my sisters, some of the friends. But when I discovered this is something that it actually happens globally. We're talking over 12 million girls every single year that are losing their chances of living the life that they desire to live, whether it's education or entrepreneurship or whatever it might be in every girl's situation or their goals and dreams. But that's pretty much what I Want Freedom is about, to bring in awareness, healing, education, and also breaking the cycle. This is something that's been practiced generation after generation, and there's really not enough organizations that supports young girls that are being forced into marriage or being sold into marriage. We're talking about 5 years age that are being sold, 5, 6, 7 years old, being sold by their parents because of poverty. Or they just don't know any better. So I decided to go ahead and share my story with the world, and hopefully with our audience, to unite together and stand up against child forced arranged marriages. We all have the right to choose our lives, to choose our partners, and to live the life that we desire to live, the way we want to live, without our parents choosing the man for us. So that's really what I Want Freedom is all about.
You know, Laila, John, I wanted to share like the next question. I usually only ask 3 questions, but there's a lot of in your book. First of all, I want to mention one thing that's actually helped me as a woman. You mentioned a lot about how you always kept your physical body intact, how you always exercised daily through a lot of the emotional trauma that you went through. And there's a lot of videos on your Instagram that show videos of you exercising. And I want to commend you for that, because for someone who has literally at times just completely, I'm losing weight now, but usually like there's kind of like positive, negative energy cycles like human beings have, right? And sometimes like you may resort to like food for comfort or alcohol for comfort versus exercise or dancing or reading or music. And there's healthier forms of comfort. So, I mean, it's kind of a side drift, but I really did value in your book how much you chose to somehow keep your physical body intact, despite the fact that so many days throughout your life you were mentally being torn down. Yes. So as a woman, I really want to commend you for that.
Thank you.
Because it taught me recently, I've actually, you know, even recently I've really been working on fixing that attribute of me through learning from you.
Wow.
And your book. So
so there,
you taught me something very valuable, that if you're upset, go to the gym. What? Yeah.
That's the key. Really.
Yeah. But another thing that I wanted to ask, you know, for another follow-up question is that there's a lot of moments in your book where, like you said, you knew what you wanted in your life, and there was decisions that were being made without your permission. And there was also times when you knew that you wanted out of a given situation, but every time you kind of wanted out, it was almost like a wall was created to keep you in a situation, whether it was conceiving a child, whether it was, you know, threatening family members. I just, in reading your book, which I really like, once again, please buy the book, because the proceeds will go to stop, you know, this unfortunate circumstance for all of us. But, and you kept on, I felt like you kept on hitting walls in your life where you just, this, you know, even like at times there's a part in your book where you mentioned that you were able to potentially do a milk commercial, and yet you were shut down, right? And then there was even times deterrence to what you wanted, because there was times where you may have wanted to go into something that you felt passionate about, but you were being forced to do something else, such as starting a salon, right? So there's so much value to not only being kind of deterred to what you want, being forced by what you didn't want, and then also like moments where like you felt pressured, that you felt. So here's the punchline question. At what point did you kind of develop, you think, in your journey, the courage to disconnect from what was expected out of you to the woman you've become today, where you're like, I want this, I need this, and I'm going to go after it, period. Like, what do you think, what part, for all of us women out there who sometimes have to self-discover that, what do you think came into you that you were willing to draw that self-connection for yourself that had no mercy for anyone but yourself? Because it's a journey that is very well explained in this book.
Thank you. Well, to answer your first questions, I think taking pride in your health, it's extremely important. It's not just about feeling good because you look good in the mirror. I always thought that's important. But what's really more important is your health. When you are going through difficult times in life, whether it's through your spouse or your career or family, I think what really, really helps the most is to release that stress that would take you to the level of where you're like, I am strong, I can do this. And what really helped me personally was the release of endorphins. The gym, weight training particularly helped me in the sense of like where it gave me strength internally, mentally, not just physically. And of course, you stand in front of the mirror, you're like, I look good. You know, I'm not gonna let this life that was chosen for me to destroy me. And now I'm gonna have to suffer and, you know, just let it be because this was chosen for me. I don't have any way out. I never took that as an excuse. To me, it was very, very important that today now I'm a mother at age 17. prior to that, as you read in the book, that I was very suicidal just because I didn't like the life that was chosen for me. I was miserable. I had no friends, no family, didn't even speak the language, English, and being in a completely new world away from my family, it was devastating. But what really, really helped me to go through all that was through exercising every single day. And living that life was something that helped me to take my miserable days one day at a time. And that really, I found that strength through my fitness journey. And I also wanted to be an example for my children. I think knowing that what we put in our bodies can possibly be very toxic if we're not educated enough about what we eat and, what we perhaps even drink, is that has consequences later in life, right? We develop all sorts of diseases, and all that happens through what we put in our body. Mm-hmm. So if you're aware of what you're putting in your body, you can definitely avoid having, growing older and having all these health issues. So my main goal was to not only stay fit and healthy, but also being a huge example for my children that if you want to have a healthy, happy, successful life, your health comes first. There's no amount of success or wealth could ever buy your health, like Steve Jobs talked about it, right? And so for me, that was really important. I don't know how I knew this from a very young age, but I just knew that if you take care of yourself, you never have to worry about aging or, health issues later in life. So that pretty much what summed up for me as far as my journey with health and fitness until this day. I'm going to be 56 years old in a couple of weeks, and I'm proud to share that because today I'm blessed with 4 amazing adult children and 2 grandbabies. The grandbabies call me mom. They call their mom mama. So when we go out, they call me mom, and people are like, oh, your boys are so precious. And I'm like, I used to correct them, but I just let it be now. I'm like, yeah, they're my boys. But they literally think like they are my children. They will never guess my age. And I think that really helped me because I took care of my health at the very young age that end up fighting aging at the same time. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the longevity things that are coming out these days, people talking about, oh, you can't eat this or eat that or drink this or drink that or, peptides or supplements, all these kind of things. For me, I knew our bodies were more like a car. If you don't oil change your car, or if you don't wash it, or if you don't service it, it's going to end up at some point failing on you. And that's pretty much how our bodies are. So make sure you give your bodies the right supplement, the right nutrition, the right amount of fluids, and meaning water. And that would literally help you prolong a healthy, happy, long life.
Laila, John, I wanted to say, what a high level of maybe intellectual and physical intelligence it must have taken for you to go through so much that you've gone through in your journey, and yet somehow still manifest the concept of, I need to somehow physically take care of myself. And I think that's really, really so unique to your journey because, especially also an example for your children and wanting to be the best mother that you could have been in multiple circumstances of even in your pregnancy being abused, being locked outside on the balcony. I mean, the stories are just, when you read, the book, like I said, I was moved to tears on multiple occasions. But I mean, for you to have that gnosis that I need to somehow survive by taking care of my physical health is so powerful for all of us women to hear, and men, that do not compromise the dignity of your health, even if you're being abused emotionally or physically. Somehow try your best to fight for yourself through your health. Exactly. And the other kind of question that I wanted to ask you, Laila, John, I think it's not something easily answerable, because sometimes, for me, I've also, like you, have gone to moments of my life where I've lost hope and I've actually overdosed. In fact, I think 7 months ago, I actually overdosed like over 90 out of van and survived with no kidney malfunction, with no brain damage, which is kind of clinically unheard of. So it became like a miracle. Like to have like 70 or 90 out of van, you could die with 20 or 30 maybe, right? And then moments sometimes where you've done things in your book where I mean, if you don't want me sharing, like you've jumped a balcony, you've jumped out, you wanted to jump out of a car, you've even swallowed a needle, and then you've also gone through this traumatic abuse, not only verbally, emotionally, physically, from unfortunately your ex-husband. But in going through all these in your life, what I wanted to ask is, at what point do you think, and I don't think it's really easily answerable for myself because it's an ongoing journey, but at what point do you think maybe you kind of felt like a point where you felt like, you know what, enough is enough, and I'm going to keep the freedom. I'm going to realign my story towards myself. And that's why I did share that story in terms of mercy with you. Why I particularly shared the story, because it took me 20 years of constantly making other people happy. And until I even heard my own voice, to a point where I had to like scream at my husband in like a public Islamic school and be like, you better give me the keys. Well, there's going to be a huge thing, right? For 10 minutes of peace, right? So where do you think maybe in your life that you kind of came to a point where you were willing to kind of disconnect and realign for yourself despite all that trauma? And I know it's not an easy question to answer because it's ongoing, but where do you think maybe a moment came in your life where you felt like, you know what, this is where I'm going to be, like it or leave it?
The change didn't happen for me overnight. It happened through motherhood. It happened through becoming financially independent. It happened through where I realized I had a voice. And through finally honoring the woman that I was meant to be, and stop accepting things that people have created for me. And that's really, I think, where it all happened for me, is that, okay, this is not where I'm meant to be. Although I knew it from a very young age, there was always voices in the back of my head that I meant for more. I knew from day one that I was meant for more. But when I realized that this is not the life that I want, and this, I meant for more, and that's where I really stood up for my right, and I fought. And I said, no more of this. I'm going to honor the woman that exists underneath the silence. And that's where I got my freedom.
Mm-hmm. So beautiful. I mean, I want to say to all the women out there that this book is extremely vulnerable.
Yes.
There's a lot in here that, I'm sorry, will move you to tears, because there's so much. Like I said, there's so much. And she's so raw in sharing things that are so honest. And we're both Muslim female, but it's so hard sometimes to put your story out there in a way that you can so easily be judged, and you can so easily be criticized for sharing the truth. And it's your truth, so there's no apology to it. Mm-mm. And so the fact that she's willing to share this very vulnerable journey with all of us women, like is commendable, because it takes courage to do that. It takes courage to stand up and stand out. And that's exactly what she's doing with her nonprofit and this book.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think what you're obviously saying about not only keeping, which is like a lesson that I wish I knew a long time ago, but your physical health intact despite all the trauma, that's hard, right? But I think one thing that I think you really are mentioning is your financial stability, because a lot, unfortunately, of the inability for you to ascertain your power was your inability to have that financial stability, right? It's even to a point where there's one moment where, like, at a moment where she may have had direction for herself, credit cards are cut, right? Mm-hmm. In her story. So sometimes a woman's inability to sometimes define or own her power is not only taken from her because of decisions that are governed by other people, but sometimes that power can be sustained by your lack of education or your lack, I'm not saying in your situation, but in situations like in India, where sometimes a woman is really in a bad marital situation, but she cannot afford to go back to her family. because they cannot afford to take her back. And so when you mentioned earlier about sometimes you sell your own child away for financial reasons because you have 10 daughters, it's becoming a financial burden to feed your family. This is not a reality maybe in the United States of America as much, but in places sometimes in other countries, it can sometimes be a norm to be sometimes forced to kind of make a bad decision for your own daughter in order to sometimes survive. And, you know, the movement that you're making, I think, is not only about cultivating and redefining that for our daughters and our women out there, but it's also like realigning like the worth of our daughters and our women. And so once again, thank you so much. I mean, I actually came to LA to her home to podcast with my camera crew. I don't usually, this is the first time I've actually traveled to my guest, which is not the last time, but that's how much sitting with you meant to me.
And I appreciate that. I'm honored, and thank you so much for going through so much trouble.
No. And thank you to my crew. My crew has also come, Saul and Chewy and his daughter, Cassandra. So thank you to them as well. I have the last question that I'm going to ask them. So one thing that you said in your book towards the end that really, really mesmerized me, I think, and even once again brought me to tears, is that you basically distinguished in your novel that what has happened to you is not a crime of Islam towards you. In fact, you actually say that in your book that it is the cultural dynamics associated to Islam that has unfortunately caused you to be in this compromised situation. And the fact that you identify that was really, really, I think, magnanimous of your intellectual perception and intuition and distinction of the faith versus the culture, right? Yes. And then there was another part in your book that just, I think, brought me to just melt, is when you said, even in the beginning of the podcast, that you forgave. You forgave your stepmother, you forgave your father, you forgave your mother. And even how you're talking sometimes about how when the second time when you visited Afghanistan, how you really questioned your mom about things that were unsettling to you, and how you had to kind of come to a point of forgiveness because you realized at that point that your mom was just doing the best that she can in her bad circumstance because of what she may not have known about migrating to Germany, right? And the fact that you came to forgiveness in your evolution, I wanted to explore that in your own voice, what that looked like to you as a woman who's been so inflicted with so many hard circumstances, how maybe the forgiveness is also part of your freedom, but how do you offer that when everything was just so severely messed up for you? Where did you come to the point of forgiveness in your faith? I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional.
One thing that was very, very important to me was to separate trauma, survival, and traditions, culture, and people's behavior from Islam itself. I didn't want my story to become an attack on faith. Yeah. Because what happened to me came from people, from fear, from generational cycles and pain, and not from God. Mm. So I wanted to emphasize on that this child forced arranged marriages has nothing to do with faith. This is all about culture, traditions that needs to be broken. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight, or it was anything that came to me immediately. I started realizing that many people before us were raised in silence, in fear, and with limitations and conditions. And that doesn't make harmful actions okay, but it made me understand where everything that was happening to me, where it came from. So again, it goes back to generational practice, and that's really where the forgiveness came from. I think empathy developed in me because suffering either hardens you, or it deepens you. And somehow, through everything, it made me to be more compassionate about people, not less. That's where I really think where it came from. It's my experiences that taught me whatever's happening to me, this is coming from people that sort of left the doors open for the future generations to practice the same practice that happened to me, and that has been happening to over 12 million girls every single year, which 33% out of 12 million girls every year end up losing their lives, either under suicide or the person that they were forced to marry. And that's really where forgiveness for me started, realizing that.
Well, my dear Laila John, I would love for you to autograph a signed copy.
Yes,
since I'm in front of you.
pleasure.
And you can write me a note later,
Honor,
but at least
please.
sign and we'll write it. I want you to do a note for me too, so I can have it forever. Yeah. My prayer for you is that your movement goes viral, that your book goes viral, that everything you're trying to achieve to empower our daughters and our women continues to grow and expand. I hope that you're on every platform reaching millions and millions, trillions of women and children, that you're seen, that you're heard. That's my prayer for you.
Thank you so much.
And I also wanted to say, once again, thank you so much. I'm going to crown you as my queen for today.
Oh my goodness.
So if you want to put it on properly, but you are now.
Thank you so much.
You know, I wanted to just share something, you know, as kind of a last insight with you, is that, you know, my father and my mom have a really profound impact on how I view faith and kindness and empathy. And a lot of what you're saying about sometimes turning like your pain into power, and how that sometimes you're suffering, that your heart can either harden or it can expand. Right?
Yes, exactly.
And the fact that you chose to allow your heart to expand, right? And not be hardened by the pain and torment that you've obviously gone through. What I wanted to share with you in closing is that, you know, Laila John always calls me an angel. She's like, you're my angel. And it's fun. I'm not, trust me, I'm not. I would name people that will tell you that I'm not an angel. I can make a list for you and you can ask them and they'll be like, no, including my husband and my son and other people. But having said that, what I wanted to share with you, and I think sometimes a lot of kind of problems that sometimes you also have in society is just kind of like how you said in your answer that, how like when I said was there a defining moment, and you said not exactly, but there was a defining understanding of that generational trauma was happening. But what I wanted to just say in closing is that I think, to me, when it comes to spirituality, like we're both identified as, you know, Muslim female, right? And I think a lot of the hardship sometimes that I feel is that, you know, people will consider me an angel. You know, I have a white hijab on, right? And when I meet a soul or a human being, and I try not to be judgmental at all, but sometimes the definitive cultivation for me of who I tend to gear towards and love from the heart is someone who, it doesn't matter what you look like. You could have red hair, pink hair, you could wear a mini skirt, because I'm definitely no angel. But to me, one of the defining reasons from, especially getting to know you through this beautiful, empowering book, is to understand these parts of you that you've shared with us, and that your ability to forgive. And to me, that is the highest identification of faith.
Wow.
It has nothing to do with, you know, me wearing a scarf or me wearing a bikini. It has to do with how kind you can be when you want to kill someone, you know. And the fact that you've risen up to that, to me, defines you. None of us are angels, but defines you as definitely a woman of power and intellect and spiritual height.
Thank you.
So once again, thank you for being on my podcast today and sharing your journey. I wish you ultimate success as a business ally and sister. And last but not least, I wanted to buy you chocolate. But I was traveling. I know you like truffles. And so I do have my gift to you. I promised you this. I had it for you for a long time.
Oh my
but
goodness,
this is actually a size large. She likes hoodie
I love
sweatshirts.
it.
And it's the Mercy Mission, which is what I am trying to do. So you guys can catch up on that.
Yes.
But this is my gift to Laila as my
love
podcast
it.
guest. I know
Thank
you
you
said
so
you like
much.
your little baggie.
I do. Thank you. And white is my favorite color.
Yes, I know. You told me.
I do have to say this about forgiveness, sweet angel.
No angel. God, no angel. I'm a flirt. I flirt with everybody. Angels don't flirt, okay? I will flirt with anyone that walks, though. Anyways, sorry.
Forgiveness to me is really all about saying that in order for you to move on, in order for you to live a life without any regrets or any sort of like who did what to you and just continue to suffer with that thought for the rest of your life, it's just, you can't do that if you don't forgive. You have to forgive in order for you to be able to live a life, a happy life, a joyful life, and accept of what happened. It happened. Nothing you can do to go past and change and sit there and feel bad for yourself. And forgiveness would allow you to do all that. Otherwise, you'll just be an angry individual at the world because you sit there and say, I didn't deserve this, and I'm just going to have to suffer for the rest of my life now because my life is ruined. Yes, 16 years of my life was stolen from me. I would have not wrote this book if it wasn't for my journey. But I believe that this ended up being my purpose. And I'm honored that God has given me that kind of life, that kind of experience, to be able to be a voice for others. And forgiveness is one of the most important things anyone can do in their lives to move forward. It doesn't make anything okay of what you have experienced to accept and say it's not okay. But the only way to move forward is to forgive.
If I may add, I also want to say that one journey that I had to also learn the hard way is to forgive myself.
Oh, you have to.
Because I think sometimes in my life, sometimes I know it is actually right now the spiritual time of Hajj for the Muslims, but it sounds really crazy, but sometimes I just pretend I'm doing tawaf, even in the shower, or it's just I'll go around in the shower, or I'll walk around the garden as if I'm doing tawaf and I'm not in Mecca. And, in terms of the religious reference right now, I'm just saying that sometimes you feel like you need to go far to forgive yourself. But I wanted to add to that, Laila John, if I may, because sometimes you blame yourself for things and you're not able to even let go of things that you may have felt that were wrong. And I think just understanding the mercy of God and understanding how merciful you should be to yourself.
Exactly.
As well as obviously offering forgiveness to people that wronged you. But I think people that wronged you is harder sometimes. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes for me, it's been myself to forgive. It's always been harder for me to forgive myself.
Yeah, you got to forgive yourself. I mean, you have to. If you're going to forgive others, you're going to have to find a way to forgive yourself. I mean, obviously Muslim, and we sit here and ask God for forgiveness for our sins. So if we do that and we accept God to forgive us, who are we not to forgive ourselves, right?
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, so another reason for us to be able to live a free, internally free life, without any internal voices telling us that what we have done was wrong and we live with these regrets and not forgiving ourselves, it's a torture. You're punishing yourself. Life is too short to do that. So you have to forgive yourself and accept and respect of who you are, and in whatever you have done, mistakes or not mistakes in life, you are who you are today because of all those reasons.
Exactly.
So you got to be proud of who you are today, and you have done a great job even doing what you're doing with your cause, with your mission. I have the highest respect for you. I really do. And I also wish you the best of luck. Not that you need it, because the world needs you. The world needs the Mercy Queen to make a difference. And I honor you for that, because not a lot of people actually know their purpose in this world. And the fact that you found your purpose, I think that itself it's huge in God's eyes. So you're already forgiven, my love. You're already forgiven. So it's true fact. You got to forgive yourself. You have to, because that's just how it works. That's how God sees us. We make mistakes. We do sins, and ask God for forgiveness and expect that we've been forgiven. So you must do that to yourself as well.
Well, once again, I want to say that I was hugely honored to spend this precious time with you and the gift of what you have brought to our world, the Mercy Queen. And keep in mind, the Mercy Queen wants to remind all of us that even without our crowns, we are all kings and we are all queens. I wanted to share just real quick lastly with you that I wear the crown sometimes when I travel, and they'll say, oh, is it your birthday? And I actually don't wear the crown out of a form of arrogance, but I wear the crown to sometimes remind myself on the saddest days that like you said, we deserve mercy. Yes. So having said that, Laila, like I said, I pray to God that you continue to expand this mission that you're on of I Want Freedom and your NGO. I hope that you're on multiple stages. And for the daughters out there, the women out there that are unfortunately in this very compromised circumstance, please use Laila's voice and journey as a form of hope. Please to dignify your own worth and to remember that you're not alone. So we are going to end the podcast. Once again, I humbly thank you.
Thank you.
And
thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Let mercy be your meal. And until next time, I'm hoping that future guests will include Aaliyah Rosa. She actually also does a lot with human trafficking. So I'm hoping that she'll be a future guest among many. And once again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Honored to be in your show. Yeah. Appreciate you.
I'm so confused. Thought I had it right this time. Said he did too, but I guess not this time. I don't know what he wants from me. I offered him all of me.